Vou pôr o ventilador. Acho que primeiro a gente queria agradecer a presença de todo mundo aí. Falar que, além da fala que é importante para a gente, é importante também marcar uma nova fase da gente, que a gente futuras colaborações, futuros trabalhos. E, enfim, a gente está aqui para ouvir, aprender. Então, muito obrigado pela disponibilidade.
Thank you.
Queria começar agradecendo a presença de vocês e também parabenizando o Gabriel e o Luiz pela sua iniciativa e desejar boa sorte também, não só para vocês, mas boa parte do pessoal que está aqui formado num momento muito difícil aí no Brasil. Mas eu estou muito animado para ver o que vocês vão fazer e acho que começou muito bem. Então, obrigado pelo convite.
Vamos ver.
O quê?
Vamos ver se começou bem.
Começou bem. Eu vou só introduzir e daí passar a palavra para eles. Vou começar pelo Abdelkader Damani, diretor do FRAC-Centre do Vale do Luar, em Orleans. Formou-se em arquitetura em Oran, Argélia, estudou história da arte e filosofia em Lyon. Foi responsável por projetos de arte e arquitetura no Centro Cultural de Rencontre de la Tourette, Architecture of Le Corbusier, e lidera desde 2007 a plataforma Veduta, na Bienal de Arte Contemporânea de Lyon. Entre as suas recentes publicações estão o Curatorial Practice Outside the White Cube, do Centro d'Art Parc Saint-Léger, 2014, o espetáculo Le Quotidien 2011, com Thierry Raspet e o Hanhu, é isso o nome dele?
O Hanhu.
E Reciclagem Urbanité 2010. Damani foi também um dos 3 curadores convidados de Production de Commons na 11ª Bienal de Dakar, no Senegal. E o Davide Sacconi, que já tinha tido o prazer de encontrar por aqui e por lá, arquiteto e curador, formado pela Universidade de Estúdio de Roma-IT, fundou em Roma o TESPUM, grupo de pesquisa premiada em diversas competições nacionais e internacionais de arquitetura, urbanismo e projetos editoriais. Em Roterdã, foi mestre pelo Bellage Institute sob tutoria de Elias Angelis e Pierre Vittorio Aureli, e colaborou com o escritório MVRDV. Entre 2012 e 2014 foi professor da Bartlett School of Architecture e hoje leciona na Syracuse University London Program. Integra o programa de doutorado do The City as a Project, liderado por Pierre Vittorio Aureli, na Architecture Association, em Londres. Davide Sacconi é cofundador do Espaço CAMPO. Bem, eu vou dar a palavra para vocês. We are going to do in English, so sorry to do the introduction in Portuguese. I think you can start with what we said, that we can discuss a little bit with you the art of showing architecture, let's say, and also their practice now would be very fine for us at this moment here. So who wants to start?
Who wants to start?
The younger guys, so
Okay, I will start.
the honor is also for the new generation, so please.
Okay. So, I am an architect, and actually, I'm not really a curator. I've done several exhibitions, and I have this, or I founded with some friends and colleagues, this space in Rome. But actually, the way in which we think and the way in which we produce architectural exhibition in this space called CAMPO, that you see, is really the point of view of the architect, much more than the point of view of the curator. not because curators are not important, but because they have another job somehow. And we always the idea of CAMPO somehow came out just because, well, for several reasons. One, because I'm living abroad, and with these colleagues we know each other for a long time, so I wanted an excuse to go back to Rome quite often and produce things with them. It seems a joke, but it is not only true, but it's also important that we produce things because we like to do things together. And in fact, CAMPO is, it's commonly referred as a gallery, but actually we are not even galleries because we don't buy and sell anything. We just invite people to contribute to a, let's say, collective project. The second reason is that we found that Rome, for how strange it looks like, but being an important city, historical city with a lot of tourists, a lot of art, etc., is living a very, very critical period in which there is very little cultural production, museums are closing, etc., which is of course because of, on one hand, economic conditions, but also the incapability to administer the city and produce cultural projects on the city. And so we thought that that was an opportunity and also a challenge to actually somehow demonstrate that something could be done. So we started doing a very simple thing, that is to invite people which we knew from Italy or from abroad to do different activities in Rome. The powerful thing of Rome is that whenever you invite someone to come to Rome, they like this idea.
It's like São Paulo.
It's like São Paulo, but maybe more like Rio. And so this was, we discovered, we didn't know about that in essence, but we discovered this big power that if you call even a kind of important artist to come to Rome, and you find more or less very cheap means to do it, it works. And I think that São Paulo has this potential too. So I think it's a great, we have to take advantage somehow of what the city in fact takes out of us. Like, for example, the fact that the city is very expensive, etc., but we also have to take advantage of this. So we started doing some series of works. We started actually with a workshop, which was a workshop with students from all over the places. It was called the Supreme Achievement. And one of the character, let's say, of the work that we do is always that we try to start from the work of some people that we like or we're interested to explore, and then we invite colleagues and friends, architects, artists, photographers, etc., to elaborate on top of this work. So there is always a kind of project, not necessarily design, but some sort of projectual reflection, starting from the existing, some existing body of work. The first one, for example, the Supreme Achievement, was starting from the 12 Ideal Cities, which is a project by Super Studio, and we asked 12 architects to reinterpret and this idea and to work on that, and to provide their own idea of contemporary idea, let's say, of ideal city, whether this has still a meaning or not, and to produce some very simple work, like sort of manifesto, let's say, which could have been images or drawings or etc., and a text. And so a drawing, a text, and then we use this as a brief for the students. So there was a second layer of projectuality, let's say, or of agency, if you want, that was to work us with the students in order to add a further layer of elaboration. And we asked the students to produce these big models. Maybe we can. No? There's a password. There is a password for everything in our life. Anyway, while the password is going, wait, let's see. What should I push? No. Sorry, I'm a little bit. Here. Okay, so this is the kind of students visiting Rome and producing some work like this, like very simple casting models. And in a way, one of the students working in the space, etc., etc. One of the ideas somehow of our work of exhibition from this perspective is also to always try to use these different means that are the means to a certain extent that architects use. So you have the text, you have the drawing, you have the model, but trying to construct rather than an idea of authorship, an idea of collective authorship of the work, because at the end someone produced a drawing, someone produced a text, someone produced was actually a part was a work from 50 years ago, a part was a work done today, a part was a work done by students with the models, and the entire thing becomes a whole, let's say, that possibly is more than the sum of these parts. That's a little bit the idea. Now, I think how I met Abdelkader is because he accepted actually our proposal to do an exhibition together, which we titled Misunderstandings. That also worked somehow on similar ideas. What we did is we went to the FRAC-Centre in Orléans, and we browsed the collection. They have this. We will talk about. They have this huge collection of radical architecture, let's say, from the 50s until today. And we selected some works within this huge body of material with the help also of the team of the museum. And then we asked again a series of invited architects to reinterpret this work and to produce a sort of new work which would be a reflection on whether these elements of the collection had an idea, had a relevance today. And we did this through some very simple curatorial strategy, which was the idea of working on something a bit awkward in architecture, which are feelings. So we had hope, we had fear, etc., etc. We had a series of filters, and we coupled this with certain architectural elements, and we gave these invited architects and artists this brief, and they produced incredible material, which was displayed first in Rome, in our space, and then back. The material, let's say, traveled back into the museum, and actually some of the elements were exposed within the last Biennale of 2017.
Just before.
Yeah, just before the last Biennale of 2017.
Sorry.
That's fine. Maybe I can show some of these. that's not good.
Yeah, it's there. It was there.
It was there?
Yes.
Sorry.
Same.
I'm not in the best.
Misunderstanding.
Yeah?
Okay.
All right. So this was our little flyer and the kind of invited guest. You have also a Brazilian guest, Vazio. I hope you know Carlos Teixeira does great work in Belo Horizonte.
Yeah.
Yes.
From the picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I think they are in the patio.
I don't know that. He's doing a PhD in Paulo.
Ah,
And so it's a mix of well, let's say mostly of these are architects, but was a mix also of French architects and international architects from different parts of the world. And then we ask each of them in their interpretation to produce a book which was a format somehow that we were interested in because we wanted them to unfold a sort of narrative, so that the project that they would have to develop was not just one image or one architectural project, but actually a story somehow about the relevance of this original project. So this is our little space. These are the books, and then we display the original works in the museum, in the gallery. And I think that this is quite bring us maybe to the an interesting point that we can discuss, which is how, and that probably Abdelkader can also enlarge, which is how do we, well, first of all, does it make sense to exhibit architecture, and what does it really mean when architecture is not, in essence, well, or where there is a gap between what you can exhibit within any kind of normal exhibition space and the building itself somehow. So this kind of distance is, for us, I think, a really interesting space. And the distance is created not only between the drawing and the building, but it's the drawing, the text, the images, and all what's around, let's say, the construction of the project, which we try to explore in our, both in the exhibition, the talks, and in the workshop that CAMPO does. And somehow, I think that our work in CAMPO is an attempt to understand, in a way, this gap. That every time that we have to do a project, as architects, somehow we have to deal with this gap. And my final, perhaps, point would be that what we are trying, why we are here somehow in this week, is that we are preparing an exhibition about Arquitetura Nova, collaborating with Sergio Ferro and with other people here in Brazil. And in fact, we thought somehow, or one of the main idea behind this exhibition is exactly that the critical point of the work of Arquitetura Nova is this attempt to bridge this gap somehow, which they try to somehow do through different means, because they try to do it through the work on the canteiro, on the construction site, putting back the construction site at the center of the idea of design somehow, but also with all the great constellation of work that they developed in terms of painting, in terms of theater, in terms of scenography, etc., which was a way in which what they call the poetic of economy could be immediately realized and tested somehow, and to then perhaps return back to some bigger idea about revolution, the city, the condition of the migrants, or the condition of the, let's say, working class. And I think this would be quite interesting point to debate, especially within the contemporary condition of Brazil. I finish my fantasy.
Thank you very much. I think that we can start a small conversation.
Or a big one.
I think it would be nice to turn off the,
Yes.
A little
the
bit.
light there. Okay, thanks. Hello. Let's start again. Actually, I can start somehow. Maybe I have a double question. Trying to define the issue of exhibiting architecture in form and content somehow. And about content, my question, or I'd like you to make it possible a little bit, is how.
So we kill the plan.
Okay.
It's fine.
Just
It's a revolution of design. It's not something very unique. The furniture are fighting for their freedom. So this.
Okay, let's start again. So about the content, how to talk about the subject, the themes of architecture to people who are not the architects. I find that this is always a big issue. I don't know if it's really important or not, but I think it's one of the main subjects now related to exhibiting architecture. And you can see different approaches, like for example architects that when you go to Venice Biennale, they just don't care about that and they make a collection of projects, and like others try to make a huge statement about things that are not only architecture but goes beyond architecture. So this is part of my question also. How to deal with this, what are the possible approaches to this problem. It's a problem. And related to the form, I think that we are experiencing in the last 10 years a huge shift in the way that we can expose architecture, and it also impacts a lot the budget of the exhibition. And it seems, especially if we consider that we don't want just to talk with architects, but it seems very important to transcend the panel/model. But also that brings a lot of difficulties, and the exhibition is very complicated. And so I want you also to comment how to deal with the new media and installations, sculpture, other things that are not only the boring panels or quite inaccessible models sometimes.
Okay, go ahead. I feel that you have an answer.
no, I have no answers, but I have. I think that it's a little bit of a it's a tricky question because I wouldn't be happy to side in either side. I mean, that the exhibition needs to be accessible to 7 billion people, or that they need to be accessible to just elected people of architecture. Because I think that perhaps an idea, let's say, to verify this is, and this touches also the problem of the means, I think, is that I think that when you expose probably any kind of things, but in particular in architecture that has this gap between what you can expose and the being exposed, is that you have to have, I think, a kind of, at the end, a sort of strong message, let's say, if not thesis, at least a message. And for this message, I think that sometimes the traditional model, the traditional drawing, or the whatever might be the right way, and sometimes the whatever explosive video could be also the right way. I think that the problem is to accept that architecture has a huge ideological content that you cannot eradicate, and that you choose your target, I think, in a sense. That's at least is how I would approach this problem. Of course, this is also not something that, I think as Abdelkader was saying, is not something that you can completely conceive from before, because sometimes you discover that certain means can tell you much more or much less than what you expected in a way. And for what I can say about the practice of CAMPO is that because it's not only a no-profit organization, but it's actually a minus-profit organization, we are based on this kind of generosity. So we are forced to do things extremely cheaply. So we can't commission the huge render video, whatever it is, because there is a constraint of what we can really afford in a very simple terms. But we discovered that this is really a powerful tool, because limitations, architecture is about limitations. So with this you can really build a lot of things, and sometimes I think the limitation can surprise you, and you are forced to enter in dialogue with your exhibition, and this, I think, it's for me one of the most interesting things. I really don't care too much about the public of the exhibition. For us, of course we are happy if 1 million people come and then we have to make a queue up to the Colosseum, which I believe is for a part. But we do this as a almost personal exercise. Or I call it personal, but in the sense that we put ourselves into it, but also as a collective exercise of discovering something. So sometimes this limitation helps you to discover something. If you have unlimited budget, you would probably go for the first idea that comes to your mind, which anyway you can realize because you have a limited budget. But I think that sometimes this question of the means and of restricted means can really liberate yourself from falling in the trap of pleasing yourself and the public, and actually focus on what is the question that you're trying to raise, and this can be done with extremely simple means at the end.
Maybe coming back to your talk, but also thanking you for your interesting talks. I would like to know, because you mentioned Arquitetura Nova, how do you think your work in terms of, from a political point of view? Maybe because we're living in a rough time everywhere, in Brazil particularly, and I would like to hear how you understand political in a way for architecture and exhibition, and doing that, what you just showed us, how do you think this political dimension can be?
I think I side with the idea of that being political is to taking part, having the position, basically. In fact, I think that also going back to what that I was saying, the previous question is that I think that one of the biggest problem, and also one of the biggest motivation of doing something like CAMPO, is the fact that we are surrounded more than by knowledge, by information, which I think is different. Exactly, going back, who was the one that said that is Duchamp,
Duchamp.
Exactly, I think that we can transpose the idea of Duchamp, that is the gaze that makes the artwork. We can also say that it's your position that makes the information knowledge. I think that this is what, for me, in terms of this kind of, it's not a curatorial work, but let's say this kind of work of research, of constructing exhibitions, doing talks, etc., etc. I think that for me, this is for us, CAMPO is a sort of gym in which we exercise the capability of constructing a position, let's say. Which doesn't mean that the position is dogmatic and forever, it will be always the same because it remains that. Of course, there are things, principles, somehow that you might want to stick to somehow, but I think in general, the exercise of constructing an exhibition for us is this, is the idea of constructing a position. And I think that this is extremely political, because it's and we can, I think, somehow transpose these to architecture in a quite, I think, straightforward way. At the end, architecture is about defining a position in space. And doing that through means of architecture, through limit, through, I don't know, the measurements, dimensions, whatever it is, it's, I think it's the basic sense of architecture. And for what concerns Architettura Nova, of course, well, the title of the exhibition, or the professional title.
No, let's say that.
Okay, the title.
It's with the title.
It's recorded, eh? It's the
Yes,
title.
It's the title.
The title of exhibition that we are doing, Architettura Nova, comes from a sentence in an interview of Sergio Ferro, which he says, what we lived, let's say what we lived, the experiments that we did were dreams seen from close. And I think that this is a really strong, for me, idea of what is to do architecture. And we can feel this idea of dream not as a like light escape of reality, but on the contrary, with a political context. And I think that of course the arrival of the dictatorship in Brazil somehow interrupted an experience which we don't know how it would have been with a different social and political condition, and in some ways the reality in that moment ate the dream, I could say, and this led to, well, different path of history. But I think that's that to exhibit and also therefore rethink this kind of legacy, not just in the context of Brazil, but bringing it into a different context, etc., means it is a political project, because it means to also recognize that experiences, well, that which was also what they were challenging at the time, the idea that it's not that the so-called underdeveloped countries have to look to the developed countries to see where they're going, but on the contrary, we can also reverse. We have a kind of almost, I think, moral duty to reverse this flux somehow. And this, I think, is one of the scope of this exhibition.
But just to...
Una frase Foram sogni che non lembro esattamente. Vivimos de perto. Uma coisa assim. Ou vivimos de perto.
Just one more question. If you want to make in Portuguese help as well.
We can understand.
Sure.
Every language.
He can feel as well.
We can misunderstand every language. It's fine.
Any other question? Otherwise,
You can drink.
any other one? Okay. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was
For
a
your-
great pleasure. Hope to see you again many times here.
I think
When does the exhibition open?
10th of
October
October.
10th is the vernissage. So of
At-
course you
at
are
6.
all
At 6.
at 6 p.m. So you are all invited. And we eat couscous in my vernissage. Every time I do a vernissage in every part of the world, my condition is, are you going to pay for the couscous or no? If they say yes, I do the exhibition. Simple things.
And we wish you good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Especially regarding the bureaucracy of the Brazilian archives.
Try to overcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.